Welcome back, True Crime Army. I am your host, Margot, veteran and former active duty JAG, and this is Military Murder, a show where I focus on crimes committed by military members and veterans. Because let's be honest, when things pop off in our community, we want to know about it. And I am here to tell you all the stories, all with the mindset to remind us to remain vigilant always. So listen, today's case has been brewing for a very long time. There's a book, the subsequent trial is completely online, and there is just so much information. And I just want to give a brief shout out to my girl Myrtle for always keeping me in the loop. Today's case is about a serial killer that you probably have never even heard about. And this is a recent case, like in the last decade recent. So strap in because I have a story for you. Join me today as I tell you the story of serial killer Juan David Ortiz, better known as the Border Patrol serial killer. Now, let's dig in.
Military Murder is an independent project and is not endorsed by the Department of Defense or any military component. The views expressed are those of the host. The content of this podcast is not meant to be legal or medical advice. Warning, this episode contains graphic details of murder and is not suitable for young listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
Just after noon on Monday, September 3rd, 2018, a man inspecting ranches for sale near Laredo, Texas, spotted something in the tall grass along a gravel road. As he pulled over in his vehicle, it became clear it wasn't something that he saw, it was someone, a woman, motionless. The body was laying face down, her feet still touching the edge of the gravel road. She wore black shorts, a green tank top, and black socks, no shoes. The man who found her immediately called 911, and soon a deputy from the Webb County Sheriff's Office arrived. The woman had been shot 3 times, once in the jaw, once in the neck, and once through the wrist. One arm was tucked beneath her, still gripping a bag of peanut M&Ms. The other was bent awkwardly at her side. Nearby, investigators found a small baggie of crack cocaine and .40 caliber shell casings in a thorn bush. Sheriff's detectives, a Texas Ranger, and even the sheriff himself arrived to process the scene. They noted fresh tire tracks in the dirt, likely from a pickup truck that had turned around on the road. Based on the location of the shell casings, investigators believed that the woman had been killed right there, just a few hours earlier. The ranger noticed the bullets were hollow points, which was the kind used by law enforcement, so it definitely piqued their interest. The shot to the wrist, to investigators, appeared to be a defensive wound, likely inflicted as the victim raised her arm to protect her face. And there were 2 witnesses, the man who found her and the landowner. They had both seen a dark-colored pickup in the area shortly before the body was discovered. The landowner was interviewed, and he said that the truck drove towards them, stopped, turned around, then parked on the roadside for a few minutes before eventually driving off. And the landowner was so curious about this person that he actually caught and wrote down the license plate number. And because he had that, he handed it over to detectives. Later that day, a deputy recognized the woman, the victim, from a photo from a prior stint that the victim had done in county jail. And the victim was a woman named Melissa Ramirez, a 29-year-old sex worker known to frequent San Bernardo Avenue in Laredo. Her identity was confirmed through fingerprints in the county database. Detectives went to notify her next of kin, and her next of kin was her mom. Her mother's name was Maria Cristina Benavides, who went by Christina, or who goes by Christina. And when they knocked on the door, her mother answered. Officers told Mama that they had found her daughter dead in a ranch up north. Christina would later tell 2020 that she felt the blood drain from her body in that very moment. She turned cold, she began to scream, and she just collapsed. Christina managed to call her son, Caesar, who happened to be Melissa's brother, who was working construction when he picked up the phone. Through sobs, Christina said, "Mataron a mi hija." They killed my daughter, she said. Caesar's boss overheard and immediately was like, listen, go be with your family. And it turned out that Caesar didn't even have a car. His wife had dropped him off that very morning. But the coworkers were so concerned for this guy that they tossed him a set of keys without hesitation. And they were like, go be with your family. By the time that Caesar arrived at the police station, which took an hour for him to get there, Christina had already spoken with detectives. She told them everything they wanted to know about Melissa. They talked about her friends. They wanted to know if she had any enemies. And she also said that she had recently seen her daughter. Melissa had been staying at the Pan American Courts Motel in Laredo with a woman named Emily Varela. But the night before, she'd come by Christina's house. The daughter had come to visit her mom. And when she was there, a man picked her up. A man picked up the victim. He drove a black pickup truck and introduced himself as David Garza, which is a pseudonym used in the book that we used to research the story. Christina had asked the guy's age, and he told her he was 54 years old. Now, Christina was like, what? Christina, as I mentioned, was only 29. And mom did not mince her word. She said, you're too old for my daughter. He basically just shrugged it off. And then she later told authorities, what can we do? She's old enough, Melissa got into the man's vehicle and they left. Before she left, Christina told her daughter to be careful and to call her later. And she did. Later that night, Melissa called her mom from her roommate, Emily's phone. She told her that David had dropped her off at the Pan American Courts hotel or motel, and she gave her mom David's phone number. It was the last time that Christina would ever hear her daughter's voice. Meanwhile, the investigation into Melissa's death, still in its first day, continued. Detectives took that license plate number, remember, from the landowner, and ran it through the DMV database, and it came back to a man named Rene Arce. He was a Laredo Police Department officer who had been on the job for 7 years at that point. Detectives picked him up and brought him in to the Webb County Sheriff's Office for questioning. Rene told the detectives that he and two of his children, his 13-year-old stepson and his 3-year-old daughter, they had in fact been in that area. They had been out driving where Melissa's body had been found, and he was there scouting the land to possibly build a house on there. Now, he doesn't recall seeing the body. He just says, that I was there. He told investigators that when he saw the landowner's vehicle blocking the road, he turned around and went in the other direction. However, he didn't go far. He says he stopped because his daughter wanted to look at some of the horses that were grazing on the other side of the fence. They stayed there looking at the horses for a few minutes until his wife called and was like, hey, I'm done running errands. You guys can come home for lunch now. The man said that he never even saw the body. He just saw the landowner's truck blocking the road, and he just turned around. When they asked if he was carrying a weapon when he was out there, he was like, yeah, I was, a 9mm. Well, it was different from a .40 caliber weapon, which is what the shell casings were. But still, a lot of cops own more than one gun. After 5 hours of questioning and this man's patience, Rene was released and taken back to his home. However, his personal guns were confiscated, and which is crazy because we'll later learn that he wasn't actually involved in this case. He was placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. He was eventually cleared. Detectives next turned their attention to David Garza, who had picked Melissa up the night before she was murdered. Remember, the 54-year-old guy who picked her up. So they also discovered that he owned a gun similar to the one used to kill Melissa. David was brought in for questioning, and he was fully cooperative. They learned that he was one of Melissa's regulars, remember, because she was a sex worker, and he drove a black pickup truck, not a white one. He provided his cell phone to authorities, which they used to basically track his location during the time that Melissa would have been murdered. And that data gave him an alibi, showing that he was nowhere near where she was killed, and because of that, and because of his cooperation, he was cleared. Some of Melissa's other regular clients were also investigated, but none of the men were viable suspects in this particular case. Meanwhile, Melissa's friends who frequented San Bernardino Avenue, they learned of her murder. Now, one of her closest friends, Claudine Luera, was particularly shaken up by Melissa's murder. Claudine was like a big sister to Melissa and told the manager of a motel she frequented, "That could have been me." The motel manager pleaded with Claudine to get off the street. "I don't want to open the paper and see you there someday." But despite this warning, Claudine assured her that nothing was going to happen to her. Claudine then called her daughter Sierra and told her to send a taxi for her because she wanted to go visit her daughter. When Claudine arrived at her daughter's house, Sierra could tell that her mom was really frightened. Claudine didn't stay with Sierra very long, but she stayed in touch with her daughter, right? She called Sierra on September 11th and texted with her after, telling her how much she loved her and how much she adored her. She said, "Love you more than infinity and beyond." After that, Sierra and her aunts stopped hearing from Claudine, and that was concerning. And then on September 13th, 2018, which was 10 days after Melissa's body was found, a second body was found. Another woman, and she was found in the desert. A truck driver spotted the woman lying on the side of the road in a ditch, only about a mile away from where Melissa had been found. Initially, the driver thought that the woman had been hit by a vehicle. However, when the truck driver looked at her more closely, he realized that she had been shot in the back of the head. Shockingly, the woman was still breathing. She was, no kidding, still alive. The driver called 911 and deputies arrived along with the EMTs. They tried to ask the woman if she knew who had shot her, but the only thing she could manage to say was how much pain she was in. They estimated that she had been lying there for several hours, clinging to life. The truck driver couldn't believe that no one else had stopped or at least called it in. I mean, it's unclear if anybody else saw her, but if they did and didn't do anything, that's really sad. Sadly, the woman would not survive her injuries and she died at the hospital. At the scene, deputies recovered a lot of personal belongings scattered around the scene. Items from the woman that included the woman's shoes, because just like Melissa, she wasn't wearing her shoes. They also recovered 2 shell casings, but the woman had only suffered 1 gunshot wound. Detectives surmised that she was probably on the run and whoever shot her had missed once and then shot again, hitting the woman. They also found personal belongings and a name. The woman's name was Claudine Anne Luera, Sierra's mom. No kidding, the woman who knew Melissa. Claudine's sisters, Colette Mirales and Angelica Perez, they learned on the news that another woman had been killed. Word on the street was that it was, in fact, Claudine. Colette called a friend that she knew who was an investigator because she's trying to get information about her sister, right? And she gave them all of Claudine's physical attributes like scars, tattoos, and she was just hoping to get some sort of information about the woman who had been shot on the side of the road. However, her friend couldn't give her any information. Instead, Colette learned that the case was in the hands of the Texas Rangers. Colette then called the coroner's office next, but they didn't want to release any information. Colette had Claudine's children who were going to be home from school soon, and she had to be able to tell them something. Like, I need to let them know, like, what's wrong or what is going on with their mom. Whoever she spoke to must have felt some sort of sympathy for Colette, and finally they relented, telling her that she could confirm that the deceased victim was in fact Claudine. Colette was devastated, but she had to pull herself together to tell Sierra. Sierra, Claudine's daughter, spoke to 2020's John Quinones and shared how she had seen photos of the scene where her mother's body had been found. The images showed heavy blood loss and drag marks, clear signs that Claudine had fought hard to escape her killer. But what haunted Sierra most was how her mother had been left, discarded on the side of the road like trash. Nobody deserves that. Nobody, she said. Sierra acknowledged that her mom had battled addiction, but she was trying to be present for her children. She was the sweetest lady with such a good heart, Sierra told 2020. She even wondered if one of Claudine's former partners, several of whom had been abusive, might be responsible for her death. In a cruel twist, police had already been looking for Claudine when she was killed. She was believed to be one of the last people to see Melissa Ramirez alive, and detectives thought that Claudine might have even witnessed who Melissa went off with. At Claudine's crime scene, investigators found tire tracks, and those tire tracks matched the same tire tracks seen where Melissa's body was found. Shell casings were also discovered, and guess what? They were identical, .40 caliber, same brand, same make, and ballistics would later confirm that both shootings, Melissa and Claudine's, came from the same weapon. The ammunition? Well, they discovered it was manufactured by Federal, a brand commonly issued to law enforcement. And .40 caliber handguns? Well, they were standard service weapons for both local and federal agencies at the time. The case took, then, a dramatic turn the following day, September 14th, 2018. A 26-year-old sex worker named Erica Pena was picked up on San Bernardo Avenue by a familiar client. She knew him only as David. He drove her to his house, and now she didn't know much about this guy, but she knew that he had served in the military. At some point, their conversation shifted from whatever it was that they were talking about to Melissa Ramirez's murder. Remember, she is her first victim. As she was talking to this guy, the guy, David, grew extremely anxious. Then he grew agitated. Eventually, he confessed to Erica that he was worried that the police were going to try and pin her murder on him because he had been with Melissa when she was, or on the same day that she had been killed. The guy kept repeating that his DNA would be found on Melissa. Erica, at that point, her instincts start to tell her that, something isn't right, and she begins to panic. She starts to wonder, am I sitting with a killer? She tried to remain calm, and she played along. David suggested, all right, listen, instead of sticking around here, let's just grab some food. And he was thinking that maybe Erica was hungry. But as they left the house, Erica vomited in the yard because she was so nervous and fear was overtaking her body. David then drove them to a gas station, but instead of pulling into a visible parking spot, he steered around the back, which was shielded by a tractor trailer. There were no cameras, there were no witnesses. And that's when the man, David, pulled out a .40 caliber pistol and pointed it at Erica. At that point, Erica knew her instincts were right. In that moment, David had to be the man who had killed Melissa and Claudine. So Erica fought with everything she had. She was trying to get out of the vehicle. David then grabbed at her shirt, trying to drag her back into the truck, but Erica wiggled free, slipped out of her top, and then ran like hell. She bolted around to the front of the store, completely shirtless, and she spotted a state trooper who just happened to be there by coincidence, pumping his own gas. It was Trooper Francisco Hernandez. Erica sprinted toward the man, breathless and terrified. He has a gun, she said. He tried to kill me. She told him that she had gotten a really weird feeling from David. She explained it as this vibe. It was a horrible vibe that she had been feeling, and she even said that she had thrown up outside of the guy's house. Now, Trooper Hernandez asked her if she had been assaulted because he's like, hey, where's your shirt? Erica explained that she had gotten out of her shirt in order to escape from David's vehicle. Now, his body cam footage, this particular officer, is shown during day one of a subsequent trial. Trooper Hernandez took Erica Pena to a nearby police station where she recounted everything that happened at night. How she'd gone with David to his house, how he started nervously talking about Melissa Ramirez's murder, and how it just made her completely unsettled. Investigators asked what kind of vehicle this David fellow drove, and she told him it was a white pickup truck. When they asked if he worked in the oil fields, she shrugged. She's like, I really don't know much about this guy. He served in the military, but that's really all I know. Erica was able to describe the neighborhood that the man lived in and particular details of the guy's home. So detectives put her in the squad car and they just started driving. They started driving near that gas station and they were canvassing that area, which was near the guy's house. And eventually, Erica actually says, that's the house. That's the house right there. And so police were able to confirm that that was in fact the house when they walked up to it and they actually found her vomit, because remember, when she was exiting the house, she was so nervous that she threw up right outside of the house. So police secured a search warrant for that house. They didn't even know who it belonged to, but they secured a search warrant. When they entered the home, no one was inside. But what they did find was very alarming. There were firearms staged throughout the house, an AR-15 rifle, multiple pistols, almost like if the homeowner had been preparing for a no-kidding shootout. They ran the address and they found that it belonged to a man named Juan David Ortiz and his wife. Now, he's this 34-year-old guy, and guess what? He owned a white Dodge Ram 2500 pickup truck. And he did have disabled veteran plates, which were registered to that house. A BOLO, a be on the lookout, was issued immediately for this guy, and police launched a search for Ortiz and his truck. And guess what? Just 4 hours after Erica's narrow escape with her life, a state trooper by the name of John Bradshaw spotted a white Dodge pickup truck at another gas station. And this gas station was just 7 miles from where Erica had fled. So this trooper called in backup and waited. Trooper Abel Obregon joined him, and together they waited for the suspect to exit the store. When Ortiz steps outside, the troopers give verbal commands, right? They're like, hands up, turn around. And Ortiz is kind of shocked. He's like, wait, you're scaring me. What the heck is going on? And for a moment, Ortiz did appear like he was ready to comply. But then he suddenly bolted. He sprinted up a ramp and disappeared into a nearby parking garage. Now, the troopers stopped the pursuit for whatever reason, and they called for reinforcements. And reinforcements they got. The SWAT team showed up, Webb County deputies showed up, state troopers showed up, and the Laredo police swarmed the area. And they were forming a perimeter around the garage as they prepared to move in on this guy. As the manhunt was unfolding, a chilling 911 call came in. Another body had just been found just outside of Laredo, and this body had been discarded on the side of the road. Remember, when Erica had basically confronted the cop and was like, hey, this guy tried to kill me, there was a good couple of hours from when that happened to when the perpetrator was caught. So, did he take another life in between? Well, we'll learn that he did. When deputies arrived at the scene where there was another body, it was clear this was another murder victim. The victim had been shot and left in a nearby remote area. Investigators recovered more .40 caliber shell casings. And what brand were they? Federal brand, just like before. This was the man's third victim. This victim was identified as Guiselda Cantu. Guiselda was a sex worker known to work along San Bernardo Avenue. In the midst of the search for the man who had tried to kill Erica and investigating this third body on this night, Webb County Sheriff's Office got word from the U.S. Border Patrol office in Laredo that Juan David Ortiz was one of their own. They had received the BOLO about this guy, and they realized that the wanted man was their very own Agent Ortiz. And he wasn't just any agent. He was a supervisory agent, no less. They were hunting for a fellow law enforcement officer. Back at the parking garage, Ortiz, who was now on the run, found a hiding place in the bed of a pickup truck parked on the top floor. It was the fourth floor. He got his phone out and he started posting to his Facebook page. One post said something like, Doc Ortiz checks out, farewell. Another said, to my wife and kids, I love you. An hour and a half after he ran from the trooper, a force of officers finished clearing all but the very top floor of the parking garage. They spotted the black pickup truck and they approached it. And that's where they found Juan David Ortiz laying face up in the back of the truck. As they approached, Ortiz pulled out his cell phone, maybe to look like he had a gun. He may have been trying to get the police who were approaching him to basically shoot him. However, they were able to take him into custody at about 2:30 in the morning without incident. One of the arresting officers asked him for his name, and Ortiz simply answered, "You know my name." He told one of the arresting officers to take your trophy shot, to which the officer replied, "Yeah, we don't do that." What Ortiz was referring to was something that U.S. forces in Iraq and Afghanistan allegedly did when they captured or killed a high-value target. They would take a picture of the body and refer to it as a trophy shot. The officer that detained him was also a veteran and told Ortiz, like I said, "We don't do that here." Ortiz was brought into an interrogation room. Remember, it's almost 3 o'clock in the morning, and he was utterly arrogant. He had no qualms about what he did. He was like, "Oh, who was the trooper that I smoked?" Remember, because he ran away and outran the other guys. He then said, "Tell him he needs to work out some more, man." Then he laughed and said it wasn't just one cop that he had escaped, it was two. When you think about it, this was one cocky SOB. So I did go back and watch a portion of this interrogation, and no kidding, I didn't know what to expect from this killer, alleged killer at this point. But when I looked at him, he seemed completely normal. Clean cut, button down shirt. I was like, wait a minute, who's the criminal here, right? But we would soon learn. He was then left on his own in the room with his hands cuffed behind him. So here is a video of him appearing exacerbated as he waited in the interrogation room. So let me tell you a little bit about Ortiz. Investigators learned that Ortiz was originally from Brownsville, Texas. He had been married for 14 years and he was a father of 3. Ortiz was a Navy veteran who served as a corpsman embedded with Marines, hence him referring to himself as Doc Ortiz on his Facebook post, right? He joined right out of high school in July of 2001. 2 months before 9/11, and he was stationed at Camp Pendleton, California. He deployed to Kuwait with Lima Battery, 3rd Battalion, 12th Marines in January of 2003. By April, they had convoyed into Baghdad, where they were assigned to clear the Al-Rashid Hospital and excavate over 140 bodies that had been buried on the grounds by Saddam Hussein's Sunni insurgents. After a month at a different location, they finally redeployed back on a ship to Camp Pendleton. Ortiz took leave in August to go back home to see his family, and it was there where he reconnected with a girl that he knew in high school named Daniela Guajardo. They started dating, got married, and they got married in 2004. Ortiz was deployed briefly to Okinawa, then the Navy moved his family to San Antonio in 2005. Over the next few years, the couple had 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy. Somewhere along the line, Daniela became a nurse and Ortiz enrolled in college and completed a bachelor's degree in criminal justice forensics, and he followed it up with a master's in international relations. Ortiz was subsequently honorably discharged from the Navy in 2009. During his 8 years as a corpsman, he received the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, Combat Action Ribbon, Presidential Unit Citation, Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal, and both sharpshooter marksmanship and pistol marksmanship ribbons. He initially looked at joining the San Antonio PD, and he even had a training date for the academy. But he always dreamed of being a Border Patrol agent. Ortiz told his neighbors that because he was the son of immigrants, he wanted to be able to help those along the border who had medical needs. Ortiz attended the Border Patrol Academy in New Mexico and was assigned to the Cotulla Station, which was about an hour's drive from San Antonio. He was issued a .40 caliber H&K P2000 semi-automatic pistol as his service weapon. In 2016, Ortiz was transferred to the Laredo sector, one of Border Patrol's busiest areas. They bought a house, the couple bought a house in Laredo, and Daniela got a job as a nurse in a local hospital. By 2017, David was assigned to the Targeted Enforcement Unit, which are specially trained agents that raid and break up smuggling rings. In 2018, Ortiz received a promotion to supervisory agent and started working in the Intel Center in a North Laredo Border Patrol building. Now, around this time, Ortiz began to have these migraine headaches. He had trouble sleeping, mood swings, And these mood swings weren't just typical mood swings. He would suddenly break out in complete anger. Due to this, he sought treatment at the VA hospital where they diagnosed him with PTSD and depression, and they started him on a litany of medications. They also referred him to a therapist. Now, Ortiz started drinking heavily over this time, and he began to start seeking the companionship of sex workers. And the sex workers he visited were on San Bernardo Avenue. So his initial interview lasted 8 hours. During this time, Ortiz told investigators that his wife was driving back from San Antonio with his kids. He also told them all the different weapons that he had at his house, which they already knew. During the 8-hour-long interview, Captain Fred Calderon and Texas Ranger E.J. Salinas, they questioned Ortiz. Ranger Salinas read Ortiz his Miranda rights, but when they offered him the paperwork for him to sign, Ortiz basically was like, nah, 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 nah. He waved his hand and he said he didn't need to sign, but he continued to answer questions. While he refused to give authorities his name, he did tell investigators his wife's name and gave a vehicle description and told them, like I said, that she had been driving back from San Antonio with his kids. Then Ortiz listed off all the weapons inside his house, which was a lot. He talked about his job, how he moved to Laredo for a promotion, and how he started going to the VA because of his drinking. Then he listed off all of the specialists that he had seen at the VA, in addition to all the medications that he had taken and how he was calm and relaxed after taking the meds, but that they made him feel a certain way. Ortiz denied knowing who Erica was when asked. Remember, she's a survivor. But what he didn't know was that Erica was in the same building giving a detailed description of his truck, what she left inside of it. By the way, she left her purse. And she even gave detectives like a play-by-play, like a layout of like, this is what the inside of his house looks like. When they showed Ortiz pictures of the purses that they found in his car, including Erica's, he basically was like, I don't know. I don't even know how those got there. Like, I have no clue, right? They always do that, right? So they showed him pictures then of Melissa, Claudine, the two victims from before, and even Guiselda, the third victim. They showed him pictures of these women when they were alive, and then ones of when they were discovered deceased. When the detective said that Melissa had been shot in the back of the head, Ortiz kind of like did a double take. He jumped a little bit and was kind of like, what? What are you talking about? She was shot in the back of the head or whatever it is. Then the detective said, okay, she was shot twice. And that seemed to appease him and seem more sensible to Ortiz. When the detective said that Melissa had left 5 kids behind, Ortiz just kind of like shook his head and was like, 5 kids, that's a lot of kids. Like, no sympathy that this woman had died, leaving behind 5 kids, just kind of like, oh, that's a lot of kids, right? Texas Ranger Salinas then asked Ortiz if he had ever blacked out, like if he suffered from blackouts. And as soon as he said it, Ortiz jumped on it. He's like, yeah, I black out all the time, especially when I drink. Now, of course, this would be something that he would pick up on, and it would be a perfect excuse for him. Like, I may have done it, but, I don't remember. After they took Ortiz's clothes as evidence and they dressed him in an Orange County jail set of clothes, Ortiz kept up his arrogance for a little bit. At one point, he asked Captain Calderon to take his cuffs off, which he did, and at that point, he started talking. During this interrogation, Ortiz finally opens up. He talks about Melissa, the first victim, and according to him, he claimed that Melissa and him were together and then that she used drugs and passed out. He tried to figure out what to do to get rid of her, and then he was just kind of like, you know what? I'm just going to kill her. Just going to kill her, he says. He then drove out to a rural road where he shot her and left her body on the side of the gravel road. Obviously, this guy is lying, right? Because we now know that when Melissa was killed, she did in fact have a defensive wound on her wrist, remember? So she wasn't passed out when he shot her. She was like clearly trying to survive. Ortiz told detectives that he picked Claudine up and that while in his vehicle, they talked about how it would be interesting to go to where Melissa had been killed. As they were driving to that location, Ortiz said that Claudine started freaking out and said that, she thought he was the one who had killed Melissa. And she was right. So instead of driving to where Melissa had been shot, he stopped in a different location. Claudine then got out of his truck and basically he got his gun and shot her in the back of the head. Claudine was the victim that didn't die right away, by the way, right? She got shot once and then he just left her to die. After telling the investigators about these two victims, he basically tried to downplay it. He basically said, I killed these women to clean up Laredo. And he was referring to the fact that they were sex workers. During the interview, Ortiz told them, well, there are more victims. What? I mean, by this point, they already know about the third victim. But there were more. He said that about 2 hours after Erica had escaped from his truck, he drove to another gas station where he purchased some Bud Light, right? After he picked up his beers, he drove back down to San Bernardo Avenue where he looked for a new victim. And that's where he found a new victim. Janelle Ortiz, a 28-year-old transgender woman who got into his car. Ortiz told investigators very specific information about where to find her body because by this point, she had not yet been discovered. They followed his instructions and they located Janelle's remains. After killing Janelle, Ortiz said that he went back to San Bernardo and picked up 34-year-old Guiselda Shelly Hernandez Cantu. He drove with Shelly to the outskirts of Laredo where he had taken his other victims and he parked under the overpass. In that moment, as he has Shelly in the car, he decided that he was going to let her go. He decided, I've done enough killing. I've killed 3. I'm not going to kill another one. So he ordered her out of the truck. He wanted her to relay a message, though. At that point, he says that he admitted to Shelly that he was the killer on the news that everyone was searching for, but that now he wanted to just end his life. He was going to take his life. He wanted her to go and pass on a message. But according to Ortiz, instead of Shelly running away, she actually walked back to Ortiz's truck and she told him that what he needs is God and that God can forgive him for whatever it is that he's done. You killed 1 person, God forgives. You killed 2 people, God forgives. You killed 3 people, God forgives. But Ortiz told authorities he didn't want to hear about God. So he then pointed his gun at Shelly and told her to leave, walk away. And when she didn't, he shot her 3 times. When Ortiz made his first appearance in court, he entered a plea of not guilty. Melissa's mom, Christina, yelled out, "Maldito asesino," which translates to "you damned assassin." Ortiz looked over toward her with a smirk on his face. All he had was a freaking smirk. The defense team wasted no time in requesting a change in venue, which the judge granted. The trial was moved 150 miles north to San Antonio, which is in Bexar County. And of course, all of this is happening during the height of COVID. So the trial was delayed, and then it was delayed again, and then it was delayed again, and then it was delayed again. And finally, it made the docket in November of 2022. The families of the 4 victims had waited 4 long years before their loved ones would finally have their shot at justice. They filled the seats with some of the victims' families wearing a shirt or shirts that had pictures of the victims, and it was emblazoned with "They are loved." Judge Oscar Hale Jr. from the 406th Circuit Court presided. Now, one of the most compelling witnesses that took the stand was survivor Erica Pena. She bravely testified about her addiction to cocaine and heroin and how she had turned to working the streets to support her habit. The prosecution led her through what happened on that night in September of 2018 when she narrowly escaped with her life. The defense attacked Erica's credibility, however, because she was using drugs and she was intoxicated on the very night that Ortiz pointed that gun at her. But listen, even though they were like, listen, you're like this, you're that, you're this, whatever, Erica was unflappable on the stand and told the exact story that she had told the night that she escaped with her life. The next person to testify was Trooper Hernandez, who was the Texas State Trooper who was refueling his vehicle when Erica ran out, right? And on day 2 of the trial, Trooper Bradshaw testified about being pulled from a Border Patrol mission to help in the search for Ortiz. So he was the one who spotted Ortiz's truck at a gas station and was the one who attempted to take him into custody before, of course, Ortiz took off, right?
I was at the gas station at the intersection of Loop 20 and McPherson Road. I can't recall if I had just finished gassing up the patrol unit or I was about to. When all of a sudden, there was a lady approaching me from the backside, west side of the Stripes or Circle K towards my direction. And as soon as I noticed that, I heard her yelling for help. I immediately noticed that she was in shock. Her breathing was kind of rapid, like hyperventilating. I also noticed that she was scared at that time. And she explained to me that she had just gotten away from a gentleman that pointed a gun at her. And at that time, I assured her that she was in safe hands, and I was gonna try my best to analyze the situation, what was at hand. And she told me she had been assaulted, and then I took proper action after that.
Do you recall what she was wearing?
She was only with a bra. She was running towards me, just covering her chest, and just some white pants, I believe.
The trial lasted 8 days, and the defense did not call a single witness. However, in the defense's closing arguments, they leaned heavily on Ortiz's mental health after his time in the military and how the medications that the VA had prescribed him altered his ability to make rational decisions. The prosecution told jurors that it was up to them to use their common sense and their own perspective to determine this case, and they referred to the evidence in the case as the Mount Everest of evidence. It only took the jury 5 hours to reach their verdict.
Verdict form. We, the jury, find the defendant, Juan David Ortiz, guilty of the offense of capital murder as charged in the indictment and as instructed in the charge. Signed by the presiding jury. This is your verdict, Chris.
After the verdict, Ortiz's attorney requested that the jury be polled. So, one by one, they answered the judge's question as to their decision, and each one answered guilty. Guilty, 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 guilty. The judge then informed the now convicted killer of his sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. Ortiz's August 2024 appeal was unsuccessful. The verdict and the sentence were affirmed. Juan David Ortiz is currently serving his life sentence at Ramsey, Texas State Penitentiary in Rocheron, Texas. So before I end, let me tell you a little bit more about the victims. Melissa Ramirez was 29 when her life was stolen from her. Her family remembers her as being a warm, funny, and protective mom who did well in school. In adulthood, Melissa began using drugs after years of battling untreated bipolar disorder. She left behind 5 children, 2 of whom are being raised by her mother, Christina. Claudine was born on December 3rd, 1975, and she was 42 years old when she was shot and left for dead on the side of the road. She had endured a sexual assault by an older family member when she was only 6 years old. And of course, that impacted her life forever. She became involved with a drug dealer, dropped out of high school, and once her boyfriend was put in jail, she went to rehab and finished receiving her high school diploma. Claudine met a man, got pregnant with her daughter Sierra, and she later had 2 sets of twins. Despite her addiction and sometimes estrangement from her children, Claudine was a devoted and loving mother to her 5 children and deeply loved her sisters. As of July of 2024, her daughter Sierra has become a mother to a little girl, and she works as an intel analyst for the Webb County Sheriff's Office, which is the same agency that investigated her mother's murder. Shelley was 35 years old at the time of her death. Shelley didn't have an easy life. In a tragic twist of fate, Shelley's mother, Sarah, was murdered when Shelley was only 2 years old. At age 15, Shelley had a daughter who she named after her mother, Sarah. Shelley's daughter, Sarah, was placed in foster care after Shelley's addiction took over her life. Shelley had 3 other children as well who were also placed in foster care or adopted by her family members. Shelley was in and out of jail for several years, each time vowing to stay off heroin and reconnect with her children. Sadly, heroin pulled her back each and every time. Janelle Ortiz was born on April 25, 1990 in Laredo. She was diagnosed as bipolar and had depression in 7th grade. She was medicated, but she stopped taking her meds and instead turned to street drugs before she had even turned 15 years old. Janelle was born male, but began transitioning to female her freshman year in high school. She struggled with drug use and turned to sex work as a means to support her drug habit. She eventually dropped out of high school. Her life brutally ended by the time she was 28 years old. Despite her struggles, Janelle was loved by many and left behind a brother and sister. With all 4 of these victims, we have to remember that they were not totally defined by their addiction and how they earned money. They were human beings who didn't deserve to be murdered and left like trash on the side of the road. True Crime Army, I'm not sure about you, but I feel like this is one of those stories we rarely hear about. Maybe it's because of the victim's line of work, but there you have it. It's a story that has to be told. This is just an overall terrifying story. And if you go back and think about it, he committed 4 murders within like 12 days. And the last 3 happened like in the span of like 48 hours. Now, this is terrifying. It's a terrifying story. And I just want to say shout out to Myrtle for researching and writing this episode for me. My sources for this episode include a book by Rick Jervis titled The Devil Behind the Badge, an appellate document from the 8th District of Texas, and an episode of 2020 titled The One That Got Out. There's also 8 days of trial footage from ABC affiliate KSAT 12 and video footage on the Law and Crime YouTube network. And we also found information on the Texas State Inmate Finder. All right, True Crime Army, if you want to support the show and listen to over 50 bonus episodes, be sure to check out patreon.com/militarymurder, where for $5, you get every single episode since the beginning of time, which is now close to 6 years, ad-free 50 or more bonus episodes, and you get to show me some love. Military Murder is a Mama Margot production. The music was created by Ty-Ops. Until next time, remember, you never really know what someone is capable of, so remain vigilant always. You have a fabulous week, and I'll keep digging to bring you another military murder story next time.
Mama's working on her podcast.
I don't want to.